And then a couple days later, he said it was high corn bourbon. And I already had my sip and looked at the answer, and I said no, it's not that. And then he said, well, it's definitely not Scotch. I'm like, okay. And he goes, it's not that Indian swill. And I said, no. He's like, well, it's not Japanese either. I go, okay. And then he was just had no other options to go to anywhere.
I asked you if it was British, and you said
yeah. I asked me if it was British, and I said no. Completely forgot about
Ireland.
Forgot about a little island that just kind of sits off and makes a lot of whiskey. But he thought it was a bourbon.
Is that what it was,
so he
Irish?
thought a bourbon was single malt.
Yeah.
He thought a bourbon was single malt, and then a single malt was bourbon. So
I said it was a Scotch. That was close. I never claimed to be good at guessing things blind. You made that assumption for me.
I just expected more out of you, Jake, is all it was.
A podcast about bourbon and the ones who drink it. This is Bourbon Matters. Welcome to Bourbon Matters. I'm Jake.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Gold Eagle Jake.
Yay, leg's gone.
All right, third time's a charm.
And today we are continuing our series on the Big Six, talking about Maker's Mark. But before we get into that, we need to clear up some things from the last episode.
We need to clear up some things, or you need to clear up something. That's a nice little sweater you have on that bottle.
Yeah, it is, right?
So last episode, Dan incorrectly stated that the Beam family had exclusively been distillers at Heaven Hill. So Parker and his son actually exited the company in the past, 1 or 2 years.
No, it's been a couple distillers there. It's been about a decade, I think.
No, it hasn't been that long.
Well, since they exited, but the distillers haven't been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there have been now 1 or 2 distillers, I think, since Parker retired, that have not been Beam family members. So Wikipedia lied.
To you, not to me, because I do my research from factual sources.
Yeah. So don't listen to me, I guess, is the moral of the story.
I think we've all known that for a while, but just now having the facts to go with it and support my case makes everything better and the world right again.
Dan finally wins one.
Yeah. I win a lot.
Finally.
I take a lot of shit, but I'm more than often right because I'm the one that does actual real research and not Wikipedia lookups. Jesus.
All right. So moving on and
got that out of the air,
Dan. Yeah.
All right.
Cleared the air.
Jake's also no longer allowed to do research. We've made that.
Thank God, because I was the only one doing research for a long time.
The funny thing was, I wanted to be nice because we know Heaven Hill is like the one distillery you could blow if you could. And I'm like, he's probably going to spend a lot of time researching this, knowing that I'm going to say stuff, and then just try and be a jackass to me the entire time. So I said, hey, do you want to do this? And he's like, no, you don't really do the research. Just go ahead. And then he tries to overstep his bounds and correct me on shit he has no idea what he's talking about with. So I'm just glad that you had the moxie to come on and say you were wrong under this guise of saying that I was wrong. I mean, we all know, but...
I apologize. I was incorrect. Dan was correct. This will probably be the only time you hear that.
Don't think people
I can't believe you said that.
The humility he's having today is pretty good. Like, this kid is changing him for the better, I think. Like, this little baby is teaching him humility.
Yep.
So we're going to talk about Makers. And this was, if you've listened to us for a while, Makers was actually the whiskey that got me over the hump and into straight whiskey. So I was trying to get into whiskey. Makers is the first one that I had that I enjoyed quite a bit. And was able to drink neat, and that was kind of my springboard into bigger and better and now way more expensive things. So thank you, Maker's Mark, for that. Which is funny because I still like Makers a lot, but I had to buy a bottle of Makers for this episode.
Yeah.
Like, it's got a place in my heart. I love the flavor, but yet I didn't have anything on my shelf, so I had to go buy one.
Well, it is one of those brands that's easy to overlook because it is typically always there.
Super
So
easy
it's-
to overlook.
Yeah, it's not something that if you're out looking for something new, you don't grab makers. So
Yeah.
it's understandable.
I've noticed a ton with people too when they're shopping and you recommend makers, you start talking about makers. More times than not, their response is, "Oh yeah, I've had makers. I know makers. It's whatever." But they don't really know makers, or they haven't tasted makers recently, because I mean, this could be a 3 hour episode. We could talk all day. I love Maker's Mark. I know you guys like Maker's Mark. There's so many cool things that they're doing, and we'll kind of get into that in a second. But why don't we start with a little bit of backstory there, Dan?
Good segue. Good segue. So it's not nearly, Maker's Mark Distillery itself is not nearly as old as a lot of the ones we've been trying out. So the Maker's Mark Distillery has only been around since 1953. It does have a lot longer history than that, though. So it dates back to Robert Samuels back in the Revolutionary War, fought under George Washington's Continental Army. And he made whiskey, for the troops when he was in war, which I think it's like a second or third time we've talked about whiskey and war in the same sentence, which is just fun.
It's morale boosting, Dan.
Yeah. So it was started with the Samuels family. It still is with the Samuels family. But he started making whiskey. Family recipe kept going on. And then Robert Samuels' grandson, T.W., started the first commercial distillery in 1844. And they produced whiskey out of there for 100 years. As we go through the 1800s, 1900s, T.W. Samuel's great-grandson, Bill, was kind of starting to take over things, and he did not like the whiskey at all that they were producing. He thought it was, like, as Jake would say, swill. He thought it was pretty harsh and wasn't a big fan of the flavor profile. So once he took over, he actually sold the distillery and then burnt the family recipe and decided he wanted to come up with something new instead. And as he was experimenting, he didn't want to sit around and wait for years for stuff to age. So when he was trying to come up with new mash bills, he used the mash bills to bake bread. And then whatever bread he thought had the best flavor profile was the mash bill he was going to use to make whiskey. And that was using soft red winter wheat, which a lot of places use. We use it at Whiskey Acres too. There's quite a few places that use it now these days. But that's how the recipe was.
I'm assuming that he was always going to use wheat in his mash bill then, right?
It didn't say everything he went through, but it just said he went through. But it was figured that if he wanted something smoother to drink, that wheat would be the big ingredient.
I thought that was the story. It was always going to be wheat because he wanted something just smooth and sweeter. Yep. And everything at that point was pretty much a grain whiskey or a high rye or rye bourbon.
Yep. Settled on the soft winter wheat. His wife then came up with the name Maker's Mark and designed the bottles and labels and everything. And they started producing Maker's Mark under the name Maker's Mark in 1953. When they went to the market, they went as the premium bourbon was kind of their tagline. So they went in at a high price point, very similar to like what Woodford Reserve did in the 80s. Mm-hmm. This was in the 50s, obviously before the big fallout of bourbon. So it was kind of a marketing ploy of, hey, we're going to have something new, a little bit higher end than most people were selling. And that's how they went to market. The one unique thing about the bottle is it's one of the few American whiskeys that on the bottle is spelled W-H-I-S-K-Y and not W-H-I-S-K-E-Y. Mm-hmm. You'll see the whiskey without the E for a lot of scotches and things. The reason they did that for this American whiskey was the Samuel family does have some, their ancestors come from Scotland. So it was kind of a tie into their family history. And that's why there is a no E on there. They're also one of the very few big bourbon brands that only make one label. There's Maker's 46 and a few other things they do in their private selects, but Maker's Mark only makes Maker's Mark whiskey.
We only have one mash bill.
They only have one mash bill. They only have one. I mean, they have a couple labels, but it's all. I mean,
And everything. I was going to say everything starts as Makers. So whatever they do, when Bill Samuels Jr. started getting really involved, he really kind of wanted to do something different, but he didn't want to alter the mash bill, didn't want to alter, what type of grains they were using, didn't want to alter the aging process because Maker's Mark is one of the few distilleries that actually rotates by hand every single barrel to ensure consistency. So they didn't want to change any of that. They couldn't have like top floor versus low floor batches.
Well, and they're fully climate controlled in their warehouses, right?
No. Just the Maker's 46 warehouses.
Is it? Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That was, So everything they do, so his challenge was, craft whiskey, craft bourbon starting to become a thing. We need to create more labels, but we can't do a new mash bill. We can't do a new char because everything has to start with Maker's Mark. So that was their challenge on how to come up with more whiskeys. So his first thing was Maker's 46. And it was actually the first finished bourbon that was sold commercially for a full time, not like a special release one-off thing. It was the first full-time commercial bourbon that was finished. So they kind of pioneered that, and that they took regular Maker's Mark and they finished it for 8 weeks in that climate-controlled rick house with the Maker's 46 staves in the barrel, as we know. And then from there, they have all these different expressions just based on proof. The Maker's 101 is regular Maker's at 101 proof. The cash strength is just uncut Maker's Mark. None of it's aged longer. It's just the exact same thing, bottled differently.
That's the thing with aging is they don't put an age statement on it because they are not concerned with how old it is. They have a flavor profile they're trying to hit. Right. Whenever that barrel hits that flavor profile, it comes off. So they're not. Their big thing is consistency. This is the Maker's Mark flavor profile we're trying to get out of our distillate, out of our aged whiskey. Once it's here, then we're going to go ahead and do different things with different staves and stuff like that. But other than that, they're very strict. They're very to their original set of what they've always done.
Yeah, I thought their average barrel is somewhere between like 6 to 7 years.
Yeah, it's usually
like 5 to 7.
Yeah. And if you're they have an ambassadors program. It's a free thing you can sign up for, and when you sign up, your name goes on a barrel.
Dan's super disappointed with.
Yeah, usually they give out cool Christmas presents, and this year they decided to be Grinches. Probably why I didn't want to buy a bottle. It ruined Christmas. But no,
but definitely sign up for the ambassador program if you haven't, because it's free, and they do send you some things that are free.
you get. I have it somewhere. I didn't dig it out. I can dig it out when someone else is talking. But they send you like business cards for an ambassador. They send you a certificate. Your name is on a barrel, and you can go online and check the process of the barrel. So it starts off as it goes through getting filled, and then they have a couple of dates that you can go and check, and it's when they're checking the barrel for certain things. And after 2 years, it's like, all right, it's going to sit for the next 3 years. We'll test it in 5 years and see where it's at. Once you can buy certain ambassador gifts with your actual barrel number on it if you like. And then once your barrel is ready to be dumped as an ambassador, you can go down there and
you get like first crack at it, or first
buy a bottle that it was blended, the blend is part of.
Yeah.
And dip your wax and get a special tour.
And they'll do like 4 custom labels. They'll make a label with your name on it. Say it was from your barrel. So kind of cool.
Even if you're not a fan of Makers, it's fun because if it happens, like let's say your barrel happens to be ready sometime you're looking to go down to Kentucky to do some things. How cool would it to go get a special tour just because you signed up for a free thing online at Makers and get a first crack at a whiskey that had your name on it.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah. So I do want to mention again, this is the only one of the big six that only has one mash bill, and it is pretty impressive because they have maybe like 5 or 6 different expressions out of that one mash bill, and it's just basically variations on the same base whiskey, but they do have drastically different flavors.
Same. Sorry, I was gonna
Yeah,
say
go ahead.
same mash bill and also like the same age.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
that's pretty rare.
Yeah, not even like you said, changing char levels or changing barrel type or anything like that. It's just stave finishing and proof basically. So it is pretty interesting. It's pretty cool. Where a lot of other of these big six distilleries are doing all kinds of crazy experiments, like we talked about last week with Jim Beam, to try and get flavor differences. So it's just a very different way of approaching the problem of new marketable products.
And their SKUs can give you just the everyday SKUs that are on the shelf can give you a really really interesting tasting.
Yeah,
Like you'll pick up completely different flavors when you go from their regular 90 proof up to the 101 proof up to the cash strength and then to the Maker's 46, which is finished in French oak. And I mean, completely different flavors from whiskey to whiskey. And the first 3 is the exact same thing, just bottled at a different proof. And it's amazing how different they are.
yeah.
Yeah, kind of one of the last things to talk about with Makers is the trademarked red wax hand dipped.
I think we have a lot of things to talk about.
Well, but they're normal. So every single wax dip top is hand dipped in red wax. That's a trademark logo. Jose Cuervo tried to infringe upon that and got struck with a lawsuit. So it is illegal to hand dip whiskey or any liquor bottle in red wax.
No. I shall
let it
clarify
drip.
on that. Yeah, it's to let it drip.
Drip, yep.
Because it was funny. So Bell Gloss. No, if you've heard of the wine Bell Gloss, their tops are dipped in red wax. And why can't I think of the master distiller's name from Bardstown Bourbon Company who used to be at Makers? He's been to the store 3 times. What's his name?
Such a great store owner there, Jake.
You guys know his name. I'm blanking on it right now. Steve Nally. So Steve Nally was the master distiller at Maker's Mark for 20 years. He's now at Bardstown Bourbon Company, but either way, he was in the store doing a bottle signing for Bardstown Bourbon Company, and he noticed this Bell Gloss wine, and him and his wife pick it up, and they're like, how are they able to, or his wife picked it up. She was like, how are they able to do this? They shouldn't be able to do the red wax. And then Steve comes over and he's like, because it's not dripping down.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
So there's a few bourbons that do it, like Garrison dips. I've seen some smaller like craft labels do the dips, but yeah, they're all very clean when they're at like the cutoff point. So yeah, that's an interesting.
I did see for the first time last year around the 4th of July they had one red and blue dipped.
Yeah,
and with both drips coming down, but
I think they did well. Yeah, they used to do that for the Cubs. I don't know if that was still a Cubs thing. But yeah, they do like every once in a while for different markets, they do like special multicolored dips. Yeah. And what's also funny about the dip is like one bottle out of every bottling line run, they over dip. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but like
dunk the thing way in.
Yeah, like sometimes we'll find a bottle on the shelf that is just like
Covered.
overly dipped, and that's actually the maker's cash strength that I have. I
Mm.
took just because I didn't know about that, and it was like the whole thing was like covered in wax. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Someone made a mistake, but later I figured out like one bottle out of every run they do on the bottling line, they overdip.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Proves that it's hand dipped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which I have done. I've dipped my own.
I say that's
maker's
one of
mark.
the things you can do when you're down
That's a
there
cool
is go
thing. Yeah.
dip your own bottle.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's obviously we have ties to Maker's Mark with Whiskey Acres with having Dave Pickerel, one of the former Maker's Mark master distillers, come and teach us how to do everything. But
Was he the longest tenured master distiller at Makers?
I don't know for sure how long he was there.
It was definitely like 20 something years, right?
I don't know if it was that long, but it was quite a while.
Okay.
I know Steve Nally was 20, and I should have mentioned his story is kind of cool because he started as Maker's Mark like janitor, and just kind of worked his way up all the way to
Like,
master distiller.
Greg Metz.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Greg Metz and I think Elmer TLE
Oh yeah,
started that way too.
back in the old days when you had to work for your job.
Yeah. But no, so with only having basically the one whiskey that they create, where they have gotten created is on their private select barrels, and that is not. They don't do single barrels. You can't just go down there and get a single barrel of Maker's Mark like a lot of other people do. They have a little bit different process, and Jake, you're pretty familiar with that. You guys recently did one as well too.
We did recently do one. I've done probably 20 of these Maker's Mark private selects now. I mean, I can't talk about this program enough, and I'm about to get super excited and geek out a little here, because it is by far, in my opinion, the best barrel picking, single barrel experience, whatever you want to call it. It is by far the most hands-on and most fun experience out of any distillery that I've done, and I've probably done over 200 different barrel picks. So when barrel picks were first becoming a thing, the team at Maker's Mark, this was their story on how they come up with the private select. The team at Maker's Mark goes, well, we can't really do barrel picks because if we roll out 5 barrels for a customer that comes in to pick a barrel of Maker's Mark, they should all taste exactly the same, because they rotate their barrels and they're doing everything the same. So that, like Dan said earlier, consistency is their key. So they should all taste exactly the same, and there's really not going to be any fun or any hype in picking and selling a single barrel. People just aren't going to get excited over it because every one you find should taste the same if the team's doing their job with the consistency aspect. So the solution that they came up with was, why don't we let stores or people come in and create their own blend by using different finishing staves, just like how they do with Maker's 46. So Maker's 46 is finished with 10 Maker's 46 staves, and that's a proprietary stave combination that they created. And now when you go in to do the private select, you get to choose from the Maker's 46 stave and 4 other types of wood. There's like a seared French Cuvée stave, roasted French Mendiant stave, which is kind of like chocolatey and nutty. So there's all these different types of oaks, all these different types of toast that make up these different stave profiles. And when you're picking a barrel or picking a blend, there we go. Baked American Pure, that's one of the staves. Obviously American Oak. Nice and roasty and vanilla and just very kind of like, I don't know, baked, I guess.
Great description.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's how they kind of explain it. Like, instead of a fiery charred barrel, it's a very slow bake and a low temperature in the oven. So you kind of pick up a little more of those caramely and vanilla notes. But so when you're picking a barrel of Maker's Mark, first you have to taste all the different expressions just to kind of see how the different proof affects Maker's Mark. Then you taste each of those 5 staves on their own, as if as if Maker's 46 was made with these other staves. And then from there, that's when you start trying to figure out, all right, how am I going to blend these different 5 staves and what combination am I going to use? Which, by the way, there's 1,001 different combinations. So it's almost impossible to create the same one twice, even though we've come like 1 or 2 staves off multiple times. And the cool thing about that is when you get 1 or 2 stave different, the whiskey will taste completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that we did the Alien blend and the Predator blend with the Adventures Club. They were 1 stave apart and they tasted completely different. And we wanted to bottle both of those just to show people like how if you tweak one little thing, wood science just completely takes over and can give you something that you just weren't expecting at all. So that
you
process,
can use as few or as many of that stave as you want, right? Like
yeah,
you can
you
have
have
like
to use
1
10
stave,
total.
or you can use
No,
10.
you have to use 10. Yeah,
Oh, you have to do
use
10? Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I mean, you could not use 3 of them and do 5 and 5 or 6 and 4 of just 2 of the staves. So it's completely up to you. You could use
Right.
10 of one and 0 on the rest. It just has to be 10. So you can't go over, can't go under. So you're sitting there blending. It's about a 4-hour long process. You're pretty sloshed at the end of it.
Sounds like you're going to be very sober.
There's no chance you're driving out of that tasting. Anytime we do one of these barrel picks, we make sure everybody has a ride at the end because it's a lot more drinking than you think. I mean, think about it. We're already like 10 tastes in before we start blending. And then once you start blending, you got to make sure what you're blending tastes good. So it could take you 10 to 15 blends until you finally land on the one that you want to bottle. And at that point, you're 20 to 25 tastes in. So I've learned after the first couple that you definitely need a spit for the opening before you start actually blending, or else your palate's just going to be too fatigued and you're not going to taste much. But yeah, it's a super cool hands-on experience. By far the best barrel pick experience. I mean, when it comes to picking a barrel, most of the time you're just getting 3 options, 5 options, and you're picking which one you like the best. It's a cool experience. It's a fun experience, but it's nowhere near what you're doing with makers on creating an entire blend your own way.
Yeah, I'm all kind of surprised because they have a rep, or is it like the local rep that comes out to do those tastings, or who puts those on?
Yeah, they do have. His name's Greg. Really, really awesome dude. He's come to do a couple master classes at the store before, but he lives in Chicago and he covers the Midwest. So we're lucky to have him right here. And these barrel picks are actually not. I mean, they're like semi-allocated. They're not. I hate using that word, but it's not just like anyone can just go to Maker's Mark and do a pick. Greg is in charge of the whole program. He only has a certain amount that he gets for each state every year. We're lucky to be on such good terms with him that he pretty much doesn't give us a limit. And that's actually that's why we end up doing so many, is because there's people that want to do these and buy the whole barrel themselves. And they get turned down at most stores, and they get turned down at the distillery, and then they find that we're able to get them this barrel, so it ends up going through us, which is pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah, it's a cool. I wish I could have done that process this year, but just didn't work out to get up there. I'm almost surprised that you don't proof that stuff down a little bit farther, just to be able to hold your own a little bit more. Obviously, you don't get the full finished style effect, but I guess when you're trying just the different staves, because that's what that was the one thing I remember from Buffalo Traces. Their tasters do everything down at 20% alcohol. Yeah, they taste everything there to get the flavors, but
yeah, I mean, you could do whatever you want. They pour it for you in a Glencairn, but I think in the heat of the moment, that's your only opportunity to try these different makers expressions that are never going to get bottled. So,
right.
it's a cool thing to be a part of. That's for sure.
I'm not saying that people shouldn't go and not get drunk at these things. Like that's not what I'm against.
No, I know. Mhm.
Because I'm all for that.
But and also, I think it's worth mentioning the whiskey is really, really, really good.
Yeah.
Like consistently does well in blind tastings. You know, it's about, comes out at about 110 proof because that's where Makers is on their cash strength.
That's
so
what
it's,
my 46 cast strength is 110.
yeah.
on the
So
dot.
I wouldn't say it's not like a soft drinker where it tastes like you're drinking 90 proof. Like it definitely tastes like 110 proof, but it's packed with flavor. Every single private select that you get is gonna taste different, and it's gonna be really good in its own way. I've definitely had some that are better than others, but I have not had one that I didn't like.
What was better, Alien or Predator?
I like Alien a little bit better. Alien's a little more creamy, a little more milk chocolatey, whereas Predator's definitely a little more spicy. So if you like a little more oak and a little more punch and spice, then go for Predator. If you just like a more well-rounded, creamy milk chocolate type of bourbon, go for Alien. I think it's a perfect time for a coupon code.
Ooh,
Let's do.
drop it.
Ooh.
I don't think it's gonna be better than the last coupon code.
No.
Unfortunately.
No, let's do.
But that's okay.
Let's do BM for Bourbon Matters. BM
Mark.
Mark PS. I hope that's not too long, but BM Mark PS for Private Select. So there's going to be 10% off on Maker's Private Select. So BM Mark PS. 10% off all Maker's Private Selects, which, by the way, at the time that this podcast airs, the price on those is $69.99. We do have another.
Nice.
Yeah. We do have another Maker's Barrel on the way that's going to arrive in early January, and the price has gone up on these since then. So the new retail price will be $74.99 or $79.99. So if you do want to jump on some Maker's Mark Private Selects, it is a really, really good time to buy price wise.
Yeah, you've got 4 on the shelf right now.
We've got 4.
You've got Alien, Predator,
We
the
might have
German
5.
sounding one that I can't pronounce, and
Klinveld.
then and then
We
Brett's
yeah
blend.
we might have 5, but I know 2 of them are really low. Alien, Predator, we have probably about 30-40 bottles of, and then Brett's blend is really low. Whatever's on the shelf is left for that, and so is the Klinveld. I think there's only like 6 bottles left of that.
Okay.
And then
You have Jake's blend.
Jake's blend's gone. No.
Okay.
One weird
just
that one
Brett's
got marked.
blend, Alien, Predator, Klinveld.
It's weird. I don't understand how that would happen.
I'll hype up Predator.
Jake's was really good.
I like the
Jake's
Predator
was too
a
good.
lot.
It sold out quick. But here's a cool thing to note. So every year they take away a stave and they add a new stave.
Mm-hmm.
So Jake's blend was focused around toasted. What was it? It was a chocolate stave that they took away and replaced with the roasted French Mendiant. It was some kind of another. It was another chocolate stave, but either way,
Roasted French mocha.
Oh, do you have Jake's blend over there?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. That's a rare bottle. So
Not open.
Roasted,
Weird.
so focus on the roasted French mocha. They do let you go back and repeat any barrel that you've already done. Otherwise, we could not go back and use that roasted French mocha stave. So that's something that I have in my back pocket for possibly a couple years down the road. We might bring back Jake's
Resurrect
blend.
it. Nice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I do have a lot of people that talk about it and ask me about it. I mean, Part of the reason why it sold out so quick was because it's really, really good. Part of the reason why it sold out so quick is because that roasted mocha stave, people knew it was going away. And then the other reason too is I was obviously out there hand selling it. So, but it is.
I'm pretty sure that's
really
my
good.
favorite one that we've tried at the various tastings.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people say that, so thank you.
Yep.
Jake, I guess to tie into the other podcast that you work on that's on 80s movies, Alien or Predator movie better?
Ooh, that's Alien is like 79, I think, so it doesn't technically qualify.
Round up.
Aliens is fucking badass as shit. It's such a good movie. So I'd pick Aliens over Predator, but Predator's also awesome.
Okay. All right. I just want to do a
get
little
to see
tie-in.
an alien rip somebody's spine out and like fling it around. It's pretty cool.
Just trying to do some cross promotion. Don't need a whole history
Thanks,
lesson.
Dan. That podcast is called Movie Matters because Dan wouldn't say the actual name.
No, I'm not advertising for someone else on my show without money. So I'm drinking a Private Select. It's 4 of the Baked American Pure, 2 Maker's 46, 2 Roasted French Mendiant, and 2 French Toasted French Spice. I bought this one specifically because the name on it was called Gun Store Ham, which just holds a place in my heart. Because I grew up in a small town, and you couldn't buy ham at the gun store, but they did have meat raffles there every once in a while. So
Figures they send that barrel out to DeKalb.
I bought this in the city, my friend. like proper city of Chicago. So yeah, no, it's
that fits too. Gun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of cherry and toasted oak on the nose. All the makers very soft, very easy on the palate. This one's just at 108.6 proof. I always, like I said, I didn't have makers on the shelf before I bought this one. And then I just had my first couple sips of it, and I always wonder why I don't have different makers on the shelf. Because it's one of the it has different style of wheat, but a wheated whiskey has the same kind of properties of Weller, where it's very smooth, very easy drinking. I don't know why people go crazy for Jake, if you had antique 107 Weller sitting on the shelf, that'd be gone, and 108 proof Maker's Private Select that's been hand picked with different staves would sit way longer. But yet this is such a robust flavor. It's got layers to it for being so soft and simple.
Like an onion?
Like an onion, yes. But I always enjoy Maker's Mark. I've never really been upset whenever I've had a pour of any type of Maker's Mark. And I think I would say that Maker's 46 is probably one of the best normal standard on the shelf whiskeys you can go in anytime and get. But that's my thoughts on it.
I was actually gonna say I'm drinking the Maker's 46 cask strength that I got as a gift. I think it's a housewarming present. I just flipped it all over my desk. But it's very good. I do really like their cask strength offerings. They're excellent. Even the Maker's 101 is fantastic. I absolutely loathe the normal Maker's Mark. I don't even like to use it in cocktails, but every other proof point that they put out is fantastic. And even the regular 46 at like, what is it, 96 proof on the regular 46? 94 is good. But yeah, I just don't like the regular one, but that's just me. But yeah, this is fantastic. And you brought up Weller. I would put this up against Full Proof. Might not be the right matchup, but one of the
107.
Wellers, 107 probably, and I bet this would whip its ass because it's really good.
So
I
much
would say
more
whip
flavor.
its ass, but I would say it'd be a good fight.
We know how Weller does in the blinds, but
Yeah, I don't know. Well,
much more flavor.
I had a pour before the show.
My favorite My favorite makers is definitely the 101 outside of the private selects because that's a whole nother ball game. But
Mhm.
the 101 to me is just a perfect proof point of makers. And you know me, I love higher proof bourbons. I love the maker's cash strength, but I do find a lot of variation from bottling to bottling because you can find some at 108 proof, you can find some at 114 proof. So you get for how consistent Makers is, I do find a little bit of variation in the cash strength. But the 101 to me is absolutely perfect. Tons of flavor and still at a really, really drinkable proof point, which unfortunately we had a ton of. And we thought it was going to be kind of like an everyday release, but now I guess it's not. It's just going to be like sparingly a couple times a year. But I'm actually drinking. I hate that I gotta show this and do this, but the cellar aged.
Oh, there you go. That was
Ooh.
phenomenal.
And for the record, this bottle did not come from Gold Eagle. Shout out to
Sure it
shout out
didn't.
to we got two of these. I mean, that's how small of a release
Yeah.
this is, and
Wow.
we did what, like 5 or 6 barrels with Maker's Mark this year, and we got 2 bottles of the cellar aged. Um, It was a very, very small release. I have friends that waited in line at 5 in the morning when we were down in Kentucky. A couple people left the Airbnb to get there at like 5 or 6 in the morning, and they didn't even get a bottle at the distillery when they were releasing them. So kind of ridiculous. But shout out to Greg, Maker's Mark rep I was talking about earlier. He brought a full bottle, poured it for everybody that was doing that Maker's blend, and then at the end left me the bottle. So that's
Nice.
how I am drinking this bottle.
That
But
is a phenomenal bottle, by the way. I was lucky enough to get a sample of it, and I thought that was fantastic.
you
What's the
know,
proof on that?
it is really good. Let's see, 115.7.
Oh, okay.
So this is for sure the highest proof Maker's Mark because I've never seen any of them above 114, and even to find like a 114 is pretty rare. Um, but 13% whiskey aged 11 years, 87% whiskey aged 12 years. All the additional aging was done in that temperature controlled rick house where Maker's 46 is. You know they're probably making a ton of this right now, and there's a ton to come. And I do think it was very cool that they did this. Just to kind of create a new element of Maker's Mark. And again, they just took regular Maker's Mark and then they decided to rebarrel it and age it for an additional, however many years until they thought this was ready. But I will say I did this in a tasting with 5 or 6 different private selects, and the consensus was there's just more complexity in the different private selects if you find a good private select.
Yeah.
Not every private select is going to be better than this, but I think it was pretty obvious when we sat down and did this tasting that there's just more depth and more variation in the private selects than there is in this, which it's really good. It's a little bit one dimensional. You can taste additional layers of oak that aren't there in the regular Maker's Mark. There's a little more depth here. But there's just not as much. I think there's not as much flavor as the Maker's private selects.
That's probably my biggest beef with Makers is you don't get the oak notes that I really like. But it's probably just because of all that consistency and relatively shorter aging period. But I mean, I think that's why the 46 is like successful, is because it adds that additional dimension of the French oak and gives you a little bit more of that kind of the woody notes that someone like me is looking for.
I will say this is probably the first Maker's Mark where I have thought that it tastes much lower than the proof. It tastes like 100, 105 proof.
Yeah, I know people are going to probably sound shocked by this, but I've been extremely skeptical of bottles when I know what it is that I'm drinking it, and it's a hard to find label. I seem to be a little bit more hard on them, and that's one of the few that I got to try this year that I've been really, really happy with, even though I came in with pretty hard skepticism on it. So,
yeah, that's one where I probably would have been skeptical of it too. I have not gotten to try that yet, but I'll take Dan's word for it.
Yeah, so I just logged in.
I trust Jake's judgment. I don't always trust Dan.
Yeah, even though we've found out how wrong you are on so many things, some I'm not even going to bring up on the podcast because I want to embarrass you.
Oh no, do it.
It's Advent calendar season. Yeah, don't twist my arm for this. I was going to let you go scot free. This is on you. So,
this was the intro.
Oh, it is in the intro? All right, I didn't know if you were going to cut that out. I figured you'd edit the shit out of you being awful. But, Jake, of the first 3 whiskeys we tried in our Advent calendar, the first one Jake said was definitely a single malt, and it was a Kentucky bourbon. And the third was he didn't say bourbon, but he said high
not
corn.
Gold Eagle Jake, for the record.
Yeah, not Gold Eagle Jake. the one that's already had to apologize for being wrong from last time.
Look. I never claimed to be good at blind tastings.
I will say a couple of the ones you've done okay on, except for the one the other day this is definitely not Buffalo Trace, and it was Stag.
It did not taste like Buffalo Trace that day.
Yeah,
I was having issues that day. My allergies are really bad.
He's used the allergy thing 7 days in a row. He's using allergies season, and there's snow on the ground. Like there's no pollen anywhere, but
mold, dust. I'm allergic to everything, Dan.
So I just pulled up I logged into my ambassador account on Maker's Mark website because we've been talking about it. Mm-hmm. So my barrel was barreled on January 12th, 2021. It's currently at 2 years, 11 months. And it said barrel expected maturity 5 to 7 years. So 2 years, at the 2-year checkpoint, they check the barrel for leaks. After 3 years, they're going to sample it. And then 3 years, 2 months, they rotate it. And then after 5 years, they start perfecting the taste on it. It's kind of the history. So you get to go through all the steps. Got my little ambassador number, my barrel number, and everything. So.
Don't give that out. Someone might steal your barrel.
If you are looking for a last-minute Christmas gift, you can also go on the Maker's website. They have their little Maker's holiday label where you can go and have them print out a label with a to and from on it, and you can put the names on there, and they'll print the label and ship it to you, I believe.
Heaven Hill's doing that for Elijah Craig, too.
Woodford does that, too, I think.
But... You can go on that, do that if you need something last minute. The ambassador program, if you like whiskey, just go on their website, just search for the Maker's Mark Ambassador. You got to take a quick little test after you watch a 3 or 5 minute history video, and then you become a certified ambassador, and then they don't give you Christmas gifts anymore. So.
You're so bitter about not getting the
Can you tell your buddy
Christmas
that from Makers that I want my Christmas gift this year? Damn it! Like their Christmas gift this year was like, oh, we're having 10 different events throughout the U.S. where you can go and drink Makers for free with other people. It's like, okay, that's great if you live in one of those 10 areas in the United States.
I don't know, man. I think it's a good idea.
Give me my gift. I'm a materialistic person, Jake. Give me my materials.
Makers is also, speaking of materials, very big on environmental things. They're huge on all that stuff. I mean,
their warehouse, the climate controlled, is solar powered.
Yeah, I don't want to misquote anything, but I'm pretty sure everything they do is like completely either regenerative energy or whatever they're do. Yeah, they're claiming they're net zero energy. Yeah. I think I'm pretty sure.
Didn't they?
They're not there yet, but I thought it was in the 2030s. They're expected to be net zero, but I know they switched over to a lot of renewable resources.
Dan, fact check me on this. but I believe that they like set up a conservation area too on the property, around the lake.
They might
On the
have.
property.
They also take really good care of their employees. Last time I was at Makers, Greg was talking to me about how it's just really, really hard to get a job with Makers because they take really good care of their employees, and there's a huge, huge waiting list of people that want to work there.
Yeah, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but they operate. It says that they're investing in trees and crop species to ensure whiskey sector's viability for generations to come or decades to come.
They have like a direct partnership with a farm close by, I believe.
The 1,100 acre farm. They have a working with a White Oak Initiative for planting white oak trees. They have their
B Corp certification, which is pretty hard to do, especially for a company that big.
Mm-hmm.
But no, cool distillery. Doesn't have as much
Regenified certification.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know. Should have done more research, but the only
Jesus Christ,
world's first distillery to achieve Regenified Tier 2 certification. Whatever that means. Sounds like they're doing something good with renewables.
Yes.
Yeah.
So good for them. Great on them.
Cool
Wish
distillery.
I knew more about that to talk about it, but
yeah, not a big robust history, but definitely they're big. I think the one thing you can see from everything they've done is they hold everything to a pretty high standard. Starting with their whiskey, with the one mash bill, everything's going to be very similar with some small final changes at the end for the select program, but we're going to hold ourselves to very high standards of whiskey making, which is why they came out with kind of the original premium bourbon and still produce a lot of premium products to this day.
You guys want a quick run through of their renewables since I just found it? So every single rick house is powered by solar. Let's see. The world's first whiskey cellar. I'm still going, Dan. If you didn't cut me off here,
you cut out. You cut out. I didn't cut you off.
Zero landfill, zero waste. Everything gets recycled and composted. They even pulverize used glass and use it on their trails and whatnot around the distillery. Mm-hmm. They have their own water sanctuary. Which is completely unique to Maker's
That's
Mark.
What I was
they protect
talking about.
it. Yeah, 76 acres of water.
That kind of stuff is super important for conservation efforts.
Right. And I mean, and I remember them talking about that when we were there. Like if we kept on this path, there's just not going to be enough resources for all these distilleries to keep going 20, 30 years down the road.
Well, when everybody right now is just building rick house after rick house after rick house and
using
pretty
American
soon
oak for barrels and
you won't have any usable green land left. So it's important to do that.
They're doing a lot of white oak research and forests. They partnered with the University of Kentucky to gather 300 different variations of white oak and 5,000 different variations of trees to better understand the wood that makes the barrels and find what is the most efficient wood to use. And then the wheat plot so I mean they're doing everything that they need to do to be sustainable. And help out the environment wherever they can, which is always a good thing.
Yep,
definitely worth mentioning.
All right. So, anything else we want to talk about with Maker's Mark for today, or
no? It's good.
It's good.
Yeah,
Jake, what was that? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, BM Mark. PS, sorry, it's a little long, but BM Mark PS, 10% off Maker's Mark private selects that we have at Gold Eagle. Go to goldeaglewine.com or download our app on the App Store, search Maker's Private Select. You'll find all the options that we still have in stock. Yeah, I mean, I guess my biggest thing to leave with everyone is if you haven't had Maker's Mark in a while, or if you just want like a really, really interesting tasting that you think might be basic but will probably blow you away, either go grab the standard options off the shelf and just compare the different proof points, or go grab a couple private selects and compare the different wood staves in there, and how they can influence the whiskey, because super interesting tasting. You won't be disappointed with any of the whiskeys. Just a really great overall brand, in my opinion. So yeah, goldeaglewine.com. I'll plug us while I'm at it. Follow us on Instagram at Gold Eagle Wine. Follow us on Facebook at Gold Eagle Spirits. See what's up to date with all new deliveries and shop our Maker's Mark selection. And if you listen to this podcast and you want to purchase the whole core lineup, just come talk to me. I'll probably give you a discount on it.
Look at that.
Look at that.
Boom.
While you're at it, you can ask him if he's got any Taylor in the back.
Don't do that.
That'll blow your discount.
You'll get a reverse discount.
Yeah. Jake, where can people find us?
You can find us on Instagram at Bourbon Matters and Facebook. You can email us at bourbonmatters@gmail.com. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all the other podcast platforms. And you can watch us on YouTube and Spotify.
Awesome. Well, we're almost to the end of our Big Six. Which one's next?
Wild Turkey, I believe, is
Wild
next.
Turkey will be
next. And then
next.
we'll round out with Four Roses.
Sounds good. That'll be the end of the Big Six Kentucky distilleries. We'll be able to move on from there. This was fun. I was glad to drink Maker's, the one that started me with all you guys tonight. And hopefully it's not the finish of me.
Yeah. Also,
No.
I think in January we're going to have a really awesome guest. It's not confirmed yet, but
let's not say anything, because every time we were going to have a guest on, it's never ever come through.
It's confirmed. I'll make sure he gets on. I can text him right now.
There we go. Jake's gonna seal the deal for us.
Does he know? Does he know about this, or was it his team that reached out?
No, that's why it's not confirmed.
His
yet.
assistant just got looped in, so he should know soon.
I think it's funny because I am actually I talk with Roger
Goodell.
Roger Goodell.
The NFL commissioner is going to be on the podcast.
Not have him on the podcast.
How do you keep any secrets from anybody ever, Jake?
Hey, nobody knows. Wait, Roger who?
Roger Goodell.
Nobody knows who Roger is. Yeah, well, either way, we're on good speaking terms. I can text him right now and get him on here, but I'm curious, I don't know if he knows Gold Eagle's affiliated with this podcast at all, or if they're just reaching out to random
I don't know.
Podcasts or what.
But they already confirmed what samples they're going to send, so I would assume it's just a matter of finding the right scheduling time.
For sure. But no, I mean, Dan,
I
why are you
sent
looking
dates
like
already.
that?
So.
Nobody is ever gonna know who this is. I mean, let's have our listeners reach out if you have a guess on who this guest is.
Yeah.
And if you're correct, Dan will get a prize.
Over under 6 hours after it comes out, someone has guessed it correctly.
I don't think so.
I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure I know one person who would chime in right away.
Yeah. All right, maybe one or two, whatever. But
that's 3/4 of our listening population.
we don't need to jinx anything because he's gonna come on. We're gonna have a cool special guest on the podcast, and I mean, I'm asking because if he doesn't know that I'm a part of the podcast, we should not tell him, and then we'll just all pop on here, and he'll be like, "Oh."
Yeah, but you've already texted him. Is the downside of this? You've already texted Roger.
No,
Goodell
I haven't.
about this.
I haven't.
Okay.
I said I could text him.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good save, Jake. Good save. No one will ever know the difference.
No.
All right.
Awesome.
So other things coming up, we have our whiskeys of the year, which we'll also have a special guest for if he doesn't flake on us as usual.
That's Adam Silver, NBA commissioner, will be on.
And then the first week of January, we will have our blend off, which we've posted the rules by the time this episode comes out. And that's going to be a lot of fun. I already have my base blend down, and I'm getting ready to fine tune it for the rest of the month. So I'm going to walk away a champion, and I won't take anything less. So
Are you going to
guys
feel
better
bad
bring
when
your
I
A
put mine
game.
together 20 minutes before I had to leave for Gold Eagle for this and beat you? Like, is that going to hurt a little bit?
I still
Yeah.
haven't started, but
This is going to be a
it's
sixth
gonna be
grade science
good.
project.
So
I
think I'm going to finish so far ahead of time. I'm going to make my ultimate blend as well. So I'm going to have two.
A Nancy
So I'll
Fraley
do my
proof down.
No, I'm going to do my I'm going to use all my bottles that are over $80 and make like the ultimate blend.
Oh, I was gonna say I already made one, and I was like, oh shit! I just kind of like dumped a couple things together, and I was like, oh shit, I'm done. This is really good. When I realized one of the bottles was above $80, so
Oh, you got to find a replacement and just do a 1-for-1
Yeah.
swap. And Dan's sitting there like, God, I hope Rob is going to do this for me.
Like I said, this is going to be a sixth grade science project. Either my parents are going to do it for me, or I'm going to put something together
AKA
Climate
Rob.
Sports done.
God, I just
Yeah.
I just want Dan to come in last. That's all I want. I'll take second place as long as Dan comes in last.
I like how he's already changed
Yeah.
from I will take nothing less than first to, you know what, second place isn't bad as long as I'm ahead of Dan. Like,
mean-
look at how quickly he changes his tune on anything.
I will take a Dan loss over
I would
over
love
anything else.
I would
That's my
love to
final
win.
position.
I would love to win, but I'm a taster. I'm not a blender, so mine's just gonna be. I'll tell you if it tastes good, but I'm gonna be hoping when I'm mixing stuff together.
All right.
Awesome. All right, well, guys, that was fun. We'll continue the Big Six next week. Until then, cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.